So, hello everyone. I feel very honored to be part of this symposium today. I'm Leonie, and I should not move my laptop. So over the past few days and just now, we've seen many amazing contributions on the development of possibility reasoning, and we've seen it from different perspectives. And in my talk today, I'd like to offer another perspective, namely to explore what happens when we look at modal reasoning through the lens of agency. But before I do that, let's take a break from talking about possibilities and talk about my second favorite thing, namely coffee. So let's say you're at a conference and you're in dire need for some coffee. During the break, you spot two dispensers. While one of them has an intact label, the label of the other one is already a bit worn and you cannot fully decipher it. So if you really want some coffee before the next session, you should probably go for the one on the left. While that container certainly holds coffee, for the other one, for all you know, it might not. So in small everyday decisions like this, we're engaging in modal thought. And as we've seen throughout the last talks and throughout the last days, there have been big debates empirically as well as theoretically regarding the ontogenetic and phylogenetic development of modal thought. So if you've paid attention to Hande, some of this will seem familiar, but let me just quickly summarize the empirical situation here. So on the one hand, several findings show that children struggle to reason about possibilities until at least age 4. They fail to hold out two hands to catch an object that can emerge from one of two locations. They fail to choose the container that certainly holds a reward, and they fail to push a basket underneath the slide where a marble will certainly emerge. More recent research, however, suggests that already much younger children succeed in reasoning about possibilities in novel behavioral paradigms, so they can identify which agent performs the optimal action and subsequently use it themselves in the fork-tube paradigm. They also pick a certain over an uncertain desirable outcome in the gumball task and prepare food for two possible animal identities, and all of that already at age 3. Now, how can one make sense of this complex empirical situation? Theoretically, there are two prominent positions. For one, conservative accounts argue that there's a genuine competence deficit before age 4. And these accounts posit that modal thought emerges after a conceptual shift at around age 4 that may be driven by the acquisition of modal language or by being able to meta-represent. On the other hand, performance limitation accounts argue that the failures in some modal reasoning tasks may be the result of excessive performance demands rather than a competence deficit. The account specifically highlights the role of the controllability of the outcome. So tasks in which children can exert control over the outcome may be passed earlier than tasks where children lack control about which outcome will be actualized. To illustrate, think back to the coffee example. In this scenario, you have control over the outcome because you can freely choose your action, which then directly brings about the desired outcome, in this case, a cup of coffee. And this proposal fits into a broader question or a broader picture with philosophical work in metaphysics that targets the question about the roots of modal thought. And one philosophical perspective on this proposes that the primary form of thinking about possibilities is not objective, deontic, or epistemic, but rather agentive. And in this sense, modal thought does not arise for us to make detached judgments about the world and what might be the case in it, but rather to make us see possibilities for action and to identify the affordances of the objects that surround us and to have knowledge of our own abilities. And if we take agentive modality to be the foundation for modality in general, it should matter developmentally and thus inform us how to create optimal testing grounds to probe early modal cognition. And applied to present purposes, tasks where children act and reason about what they might do may reveal earlier competences and pose less demands than tasks where children are forced to react and reason about what might be the case in the world. So against this background, our aim was to clarify why some modal reasoning tasks are mastered earlier than others, and our main question was whether tasks in which children have agentive control over the outcome reveal earlier modal reasoning competences. And we addressed this question across two studies. In study 1, we tested 60 3 to 4-year-old children, and the children received 2 tasks where they chose between performing one of 2 actions. And the overall rule here was that children would receive a reward in case of a red outcome. So in the coins task, children chose between tossing a coin with 2 red sides and tossing a coin with a red and a yellow side. And in the slides task, children chose between dropping a marble into a straight slide with a red cup underneath and a forked slide with a red and a yellow cup underneath. And in both tasks, children had to represent that performing the target action must result in winning, whereas performing the alternative action might result in winning or losing. So let me show you what it looked like when the children performed the actions. This is a 36-month-old, and she's asked which coin she wants to toss. So she confidently picks the coin with 2 red sides and tosses it like a pro. And this is her in the slides task, and she's being asked where she wants to drop her marble. And again, picks the certain option and is also very motivated by the task. Okay, so what we found was that children performed very well in the coins task. They chose to toss the target coin around 80% of the time. But in contrast, children continued to perform quite poorly in the slides task. They chose the target slide around 60% of the time. And a generalized mixed effects model revealed a significant effect of task here, but no effect of age and no interaction between age and task. So overall, in study 1, our findings were mixed with regard to the effect of the agentive task structure. While in the agentive coins task, performance rates were much higher in analogous non-agentive versions of the tasks, in the slides task we found comparable performance rates as in non-agentive versions of the tasks. So we did not find an overall boost in performance in agentive tasks. However, what we did find was similar levels of performance in 3 and 4-year-olds in both tasks, which provides evidence against a conceptual shift at age 4. So early motor reasoning competence may be revealed in principle in tasks with such an agentive structure where children have control over the outcome. However, this raises the question why some tasks with an agentive structure are solvable for younger children while others remain difficult. And we address this question by exploring further performance enhancing and limiting factors in study 2. First, study 2 investigated how general the early motor reasoning competence is that we found in the agentive coins tasks. And for one, we explored whether children's competence generalizes to representing different kinds of uncertainty. So just to repeat quickly what Hande has said before, 2 types of uncertainty are typically distinguished: physical and epistemic uncertainty. For instance, if you grab a coin and you're about to flip it, you're experiencing physical uncertainty because it is still to happen in the world, which outcome will be determined. On the other hand, you're experiencing epistemic uncertainty when you have already flipped the coin and it is still hidden and therefore unknown. I was so nervous about this. I'm so glad this is over. So, one influential finding has actually suggested that children's success in motor reasoning tasks depends on the type of uncertainty they face. So, children prepare for physically uncertain outcomes prior to epistemically uncertain ones. So, moreover, in study 2, we tested whether children's competence in the coins task generalizes in another way, namely to second-person agentive task formats in which children have control over the outcome, yet this control is mediated by instructing another agent. So, the second question that was raised by study 1 that we targeted concerned children's performance in the slides task. Does their failure here reflect a genuine competence deficit, or could it be explained in a different way? One alternative explanation may lie in superficial task factors. So if you remember in study 1, the slides differ noticeably in their physical structure. So it's possible that children simply pick the uncertain forked slide because it is just more fun and enticing regardless of the outcome. So study 2 explored whether such superficial factors may have masked children's competence in the slides task. And in addition, we directly explored how children's performance varies over different types of agentive task structures. So in the coins task of study 2, children were again presented with 2 coins, one that must lead to winning and one that merely might lead to winning. And this time there was 1 cup for each coin, and the experimenter tossed the coins in both conditions. And here in the physical uncertainty condition, children chose a coin after the experimenter had placed both coins in their respective cups, but before they were tossed. And in the epistemic uncertainty condition, children chose a coin after both had been tossed, but the outcomes were still hidden and therefore unknown. In the slides task in study 2, children now chose between 2 forked slides, so there was no difference in the physical structure, they just differed in the degree of certainty to produce a reward. And in the first person agentive condition, the children dropped the marble into the slides themselves, as in study 1, while in the second person condition, children instructed the experimenter into which slide the marble should be dropped. So we tested 62 3- to 4-year-old children in both tasks, and what we found was that children performed very well again in the coins task across conditions and age groups. They chose the target coin around 90% of the time. And we also find higher performance levels in the slides task in study 2. Here, children chose the target slide around 78% of the time now. And since the task comprised different conditions, we ran 2 separate generalized mixed effects models, but we found no effects of condition, age, or an interaction in either task. So the results of study 2 show that children's high performance in a coins task in study 1 does generalize to conditions of epistemic uncertainty. And this stands in empirical tension with previous findings that suggest that representing epistemic uncertainty may be cognitively more demanding, but it is also in theoretical tension with accounts that build on this supposed asymmetry between physical and epistemic uncertainty. Moreover, superficial task factors may have masked children's competence in the slides task in study 1 and previous slides task, as children performed more competently when the slides shared the same physical structure. In addition, we found that children's performance in both tasks seems to generalize over different types of agentive control. So it does not seem to make a difference whether children perform the action themselves or instruct another agent to perform the action and thereby execute control over the outcome. And taken together, the present studies explored performance-enhancing and limiting factors in modal reasoning tasks, and overall our findings suggest that having agentive control over the outcome may improve children's performance in modal reasoning tasks, and that more agentive task structures may be particularly suitable testing grounds for probing early modal cognition. And to further test these hypotheses and ongoing work, we're directly comparing minimal contrast conditions of control and no control, and we aim to rule out alternative low-level explanations of the current findings. But more importantly, and also most importantly to me personally, while this study has started to scratch the surface of exploring the roots of modal thought, more work is needed to investigate the role of agency in children's emerging modal reasoning abilities. And with this, I'd like to thank you for listening to my talk. Thank you, Shere, for organizing this symposium. Of course, a big thank you to all the children who participated in the studies. Just as a quick side note, if you have no PhD yet or want another one, we are currently looking for a new PhD student, so join us in Göttingen. Thank you.